Welcome to the Epic Tales from the Sewers podcast. Grab yourself a slice, strap into the party wagon, and hang on tight. Give it up for your hosts, the Cowabunga Combo, Justin and Eric.
And welcome back, everybody, to Epic Tales from the Sewers. I'm your host, Justin. Eric is on assignment tonight, so it's just me and my guest. My guest tonight is the CEO of Treasure Monster Toys, Inc. and the creator of Shadowline, a spiritual successor to the toy line reminiscent of the 90s Playmates toys from TMNT. TMNT, sorry. He currently has a Kickstarter for his project Army Ant. Please welcome Mr. Jonathon House. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Justin.
And first things first, congratulations, 108% already as of today. Fantastic news.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are very excited to finally be bringing Army Ant to life, among the other things that we have in the Kickstarter. So it's
That's
definitely an
fantastic.
exciting time.
Gotta thank you for joining me because it's been a while. I've been bugging you, and thank you for being also a positive voice in the TMNT collector community for quite some time. And I don't know if you remember this, but we actually met. I met you during COVID. I won a raffle for a Mona Lisa Minton card, and that's how you and I met. So this
Okay.
must have been 2020 or something at or around that time. So I've known you since then.
Yeah, I do remember that. I do.
Isn't it crazy? Now we're having a conversation about your Kickstarter and your entire line of action figures. What are the odds? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, birds of a feather.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Shadowline. Why don't we start out with the why? I should say why? Why did you decide to create a toy line, and why did you decide to kind of go through all this?
Well, at first, it wasn't necessarily going to be a toy line. Um, back about 4 years ago, around COVID time, I would just do like we have a Facebook collectors group, Treasure
Hmm.
Monster Toys, and I would do like a ton of waffles. Waffles is code word for raffles. So I would do a ton of raffles in group, and a lot of people love them. Some people don't like them so much, but it's all in good fun. And I was just I was just wanting to do something that was more of a creative community event that wasn't just always doing waffles or raffles. Um,
You want to be known as that guy.
yeah, well, and not just so much as like I don't want to be known as just as this, but it's also like I want to do fun, inventive, exciting things in the community. Surely there's got to be something, and so I would always be thinking about that, keeping my ear to the ground. What's something cool, and fun that we could do with the community that would bring about a lot of engagement and just be a blast for everybody. And around that time, I met Dan Berger, and I commissioned for him to do the our group banner. And I was just kind of laying in bed one night, and the idea came to me like, how cool would it be if we could like continue the line from our youth, from the early '90s, just like it was back then, because there are always like the grill pieces everyone's chasing, and
Oh,
people are looking for things, and there's like this scarcity aspect to it, and it's just like, well, all the artists are still here, and all the original fan base is still here, and we could just keep it going. And and so yeah, I reached out to Dan, and I was like, hey man, what if we did these, and it still was a raffle for Dan for the art, but it was like a couple bucks a spot. and he got all the money for the commission. And the idea was we would run a raffle, and whoever won would get to come up with a concept for a character, uh, and then Dan would do the artwork for the character in the '90s, nostalgic TMNT style. And it became extremely popular in group. I put these things up, and they're full like within 10 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and after we did the first few, people started asking, well, when are you going to make the figures? When are you going to make the figures? And so I knew that we I had to get into making these figures, and it was really exciting. I thought that maybe I would make like 30 figures or something like that, and I did a pre-order and sold out 100 like within the first 24 hours. And so I was, it was such like a popular event in the community, and with people like Dan Berger attached to it, you want to do a really good job when you make the figure, as good as you possibly can. I'd never made action figures from the ground up before, and it's just I was so immersed in the process of making sure that something really good came out of it as far as the final product, that I just and I at that time, even I was working for myself, with online retail, but I put all that on the back burner and I focused purely on the action figures. And it just, I never caught a break to stop making the action figures for well over, a year now. And so that's been the full time thing.
It's great. How do you learn about making action figures? Was there a resource that you went to for this?
Well, there are a few people in the community, a few notable customizers that I would kind of ask questions about certain things like with packaging and stuff like that. But with making the action figures, I mean, there's a lot that can be found online, and it's more about figuring out what you don't want to do to kind of narrow down like how you approach it, because you can't just start right out of the gate doing injection molded figures, speaking on about a year ago. And so at the beginning, it was just going to be 3D printed figures,
Yeah,
maybe
that's what
like,
I had assumed. Yeah.
yeah, it may be like magnets for the articulation. And then I was trying with, okay, well, what if they're fixed pins for the articulation that snap in, and then the resin was brittle, and so I kind of caught a lucky break, because in my research I found this process called MJF, multi-jet fusion, um, and it's like it's technically 3D printing, but they're made out of plastic. The raw material is a nylon powder, and as the nylon powder is being formed into the figure, it whatever like injects the color into the powder,
Oh,
just like
cool.
if you were doing like a desktop printer, printing off a color page. And it and we went with that, and we had to actually design joints to get the articulation to work properly. And I really wanted like the legs to have the ball joints like the classic figures, and so I had to invent a ball joint that would work with this process that now is under patent pending. So that's exciting
That's what I
too.
was going to ask if you had any patents. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's one of those things where if you're determined, you'll figure it out. You'll find a way. You just ask anyone that you can in the community who might be able to offer some advice. Uh, do all your research online. A lot of trial and error. It's a very slow process, and then once you finally get it, then you're off to the races.
So who was the first figure that you made?
The first figure that we made was Inferno, the blast beating, hella hot headed hippo. Uh,
Yeah.
Shout out to Eric Sparks, concept contributor for Inferno there.
He is
And
actually one of the tier benefits of your Kickstarter, is he not?
he is. Well, he's actually in the beginning. He's part of the main stretch goal, so he's not like an unlocked figure. He's right there up front with Army Ant and the Shadowline comic. Yeah,
That's pretty great. I was able to pick one up, and I was super enthused about this particular character. Now, is it El Lotl or El Lotel?
El
How do you
Lotl.
say it? El Lotl? Yeah.
I call him El Lotl. I don't know if Jimmy Friday had something else in mind, but I've always called him El Lotl, and he's never corrected me, so I think that's it.
So he's a pink axolotl with a great smile and an eye patch, and he is a demolitions expert. He's wearing kind of like a almost like a demolitions wetsuit with all kinds of explosives. He's got a detonator and like 3 sticks of dynamite. He came with this amazing Shadowline certificate of authenticity. So
Yeah,
super excited that I got this one. It's fantastic. Like everything that you said about it too. I was just thinking about the joints. I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. Like the way that the legs actually move on this on that ball joint, and it has the same scale. I'm gonna hold up next to him. For all the listeners, I'm gonna hold up next to him the Donatello, the Punk Donatello. The scale is like identical. They're perfect to scale with the original Playmates line. So it's really cool. I was really excited when I got this. This is fantastic. Oh, congrats on this.
thank you so much, and I'm glad you like your El Lotl figure.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
definitely that's he's one of my favorites. He is one of my favorites.
Bright colors, and the cool thing is all the accessories have sort of like that same color scheme like you'd see with the Playmates version. It's like, okay, yeah, you get like a bunch of swords and a microphone or something like that, but they're all the same color. And I'm like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, that makes sense. Like everything kind of checks out. It's pretty
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. A big part of it for me is wanting to stick to the old school way. And in some cases, you have to kind of limit yourself.
yeah.
With modern day advancements, we could do a lot of different things. Like with Army Ant, for example, we could give him, Super 7 Ultimates type articulation. It wouldn't be an issue. But intentionally we wanted it to be like Killer Bee and Needle Nose. We wanted to make it as though it was made in 1990. So
Well, let's talk a little bit about Army Ant there because he's kind of the star of the show. So this was an original design from Playmates, correct? From like the Varner sort of sculpture era.
yeah, this was a design from David Arshosky back in 1990, 1989, 1990, and Playmates it almost made it. It went to prototype, and you could see that image floating around online, and it's also in the Rad Plastic book. It's kind of like a tan color, that wax sculpt, but it never went to production. It never went into production for whatever reason. It was meant to, and yeah, and so David Arshosky, he's the creator of it. He has like 3 or 4 different versions of it. There's like um, a picnic version and a few different types where he has different like seat apparatus and yeah. So David uh, owns the rights to Army Ant.
Oh, fantastic!
Yes, and I was just right place at the right time. And actually, Shadowline directly played a tremendous role in me being able to get the contract to produce Army Ant because just the buzz and excitement and the success around Shadowline in the community. Turtle Mix Studios saw that and they, they kind of approached me about it.
Hmm, that's fantastic. Like the fact that you're pulling this out of history too, that it's like this never would have been made otherwise, and you're kind of bringing it to fruition for the fandom is really exciting. You know, is there a difference in what it's made from now because of the production as opposed to like the Needle Nose and the Killer Bee? Like, is it that fundamentally different in what makes up Army Ant?
I'm sorry, like, are you talking about like the materials used.
Yeah, the materials that it's made of.
Well, not exactly. I would imagine that, over the past 35 years, they've dialed in and some refinements in the raw materials. Um, but it's
No longer
but
putting lead in the paint.
right, exactly. But it's primarily three different types of plastics, and like you have the internal frame that is made out of what's called POM, which is abbreviation for like a long polymer type name, but they call it POM, POM. It's a very hard plastic. And then the shell that frame is in, like the abdomen, it's a harder shell. That's ABS. And then the softer bits of plastic is a um, oh, it's completely escaping my mind right now. PVC. There it is. It's a
That makes sense.
PVC plastic. So three primary plastics there. Pretty
So
much the
I was
same.
just thinking about, like, every once in a while I hear somebody talking about how, oh, I bought this from NECA and the piece broke. Are you going to be able to have any replacements for people if any of the pieces break?
Oh yeah. You know, I will 100% stand by our products uh, in any parts of our products. As far as broken pieces, yeah, it would be. I think it would probably be more of a complete swap out
Oh, that makes sense.
than replacing individual pieces. You know, maybe not. Maybe we could do individual pieces. I guess I haven't really quite 100% settled on that aspect of it, but um, either way, yeah, they would be taken care of. But yeah, there is a problem with a lot of the NECA figures, but I shouldn't say a lot of them, but that problem does pop up from time to time with pieces breaking. But
I just use them
these,
as an example. It could be any figures. I know Super Sevens had its issues too with hip joints and stuff. So,
right?
loyal
But
subjects, the swords break like crazy. Any of those things.
oh yeah, but these are tough materials, PVC and ABS and POM, and a lot of those old figures they are very well made figures, and they've really stood the test of time.
Yeah.
I think that it's losing the pieces is the bigger issue with those older ones, but
Or if
yeah,
they were chewed on or something. But yeah, no,
yes,
it's a good point. They are probably the most durable of all the toys that I had growing up. I mean, even more so than Masters of the Universe with like those rubber heads and such. So yeah, I would
hmm
I would think so. Oh,
yeah, yeah. I've actually sent a few samples to the factory of Needle Nose and Killer Bee, so they can kind of cut one of those bad boys open and kind of take a little inspiration
that's really
from
cool.
from certain aspects of the build there.
So, what about some of the folks from Playmates? Because I know I just recently rewatched, and we just had Isaac Elliott Fisher from Turtle Power on. Some of the folks from Playmates. Any chance that you'll be sending them any samples?
I would love to. I actually reached out to Playmates. I reached out to Viacom. I reached out to um, so many people, and it's really difficult to really break through with certain things. Um, I don't know how Playmates would feel about it. I don't know if they would
Yeah, right.
welcome the sample with open arms, or if they'd be like, nah. But and several people have said like Playmates should be making this, and even before during the announcement, and I don't take that as as an insult at all. It's like, yeah, you're like, I kind of wish they would have made it a long time ago, but it's one of those things. Stuff like this. So much goes into the production of a toy, and there is oftentimes so much red tape, and it's just not so easy as you should make that. You
Yeah,
know,
really.
so um,
Is there anything that you had to change because it just didn't work out design wise from the design that you had?
hmm. Good question. There are, for the most part, no. David, he's a master at his craft, and even so, going from concept art into a physical piece, some changes need to be made. But fortunately, because I had everything 3D scanned,
Hmm.
so you can adjust the sizes a little bit. You can make the turret a little smaller. You can make the thorax a little bigger. You can the head a little bit smaller. But nothing major had to be changed. Just small changes. Now
That's
there
good.
is one thing. Uh, so Army Ant, he had four different types of arms, and with the sculpt that I got from Turtlewing Studios, and two of the hands for one set of the arms were a lot smaller than the hands on the other two. They were much bigger. And for the other two, the much bigger hands, they didn't have the same exact opening in the grip. So I had to take in the files, the 3D files, I had to cut the hand off that worked the best and fuse it onto the other arm.
Oh, no
You
kidding.
see what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like a copy and paste almost, but in a 3D sort of design.
Right, right. And so
Wow.
there's still the possibility of that extra set of arms um, coming with the not coming with the figure, but being made available, I should say.
Okay.
I've been kind of mulling it over, but
DLC, right?
yes,
Like
yes,
extra content. Yeah.
right.
Be like, oh,
But
this comes with the original set of arms. Okay, that's
that's
neat.
right. But you just all these things you just have to be careful, not jumping the gun because, man, those iron molds for the injection molding, those things are costly. Those things are
Yeah.
no joke at all.
Well, yeah, I imagine. Is there anything that you've learned that along the way with this that you can now apply to something else? Like maybe if you're going to make a different thing down the road, or like are you going to make your own custom figures or something? Or any sort of skill that you've picked up on this that you didn't previously have?
With Army Ant, like specifically,
Oh, well, it could
or
be anything Shadowline. Like maybe like I don't know, like were you a 3D computer guy, doing 3D models, or is that a new skill you've obtained?
no, no, it's I was never a 3D model guy. You kind of pick up with the process. You have to just learn as you go. You have to be flexible. You have to,
Imagine.
and there are a lot of experts out there, that take care of their particular fields. Like you have your 3D sculptors, you have your artists, you have all your various vendors that supply what you need. But um, it's like I learned how to make all the packaging from the ground up. Uh, but yeah, the biggest part is the most tedious part, and that has to do whenever you're working with the sculptors and you're trying to make sure everything with the figure is going to work in terms of how thick are the accessories going to be,
Hmm.
is the hand posed right, how are the arms going to be posed, is there enough clearance for the arms to move up and down, where are the joints going to be on the arm, is it going to be like a 45-degree angle at the elbow, um, just how is the like if the figure has a beard, is that going to interfere with anything?
Yep, moving the neck. Yep.
Yeah, there are just so many little things like that you don't think of until you realize it's wrong. So little stuff like that is definitely going to stick with me along the way in the future for new creations.
Jeez, that makes me think of the original Playmates Shredder, and you're just like, how is he supposed to stand up? Like realistically, you just kind of,
Right.
I guess I'll just lean him up against this, sewer tube, or something. So, and then finally we
That's
got the
right.
stands where you could put him in. It's like, all right, he's just gonna stay on the foot ski. So, it's like, and he was
That's right.
happy to do that. So
Right.
that's good. I wanted to go back and ask a little bit more about Shadowline here. You've got a cast of characters with some pretty great names and all that are leading into a comic book with this. Could you give us a taste of some of the characters from Shadowline?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and now, and we have volume one and we have volume two. And in the first volume, we have 12 characters. And in volume two, we have 12 characters. And, well, we don't have 12 characters yet. We're about halfway through volume two. But as far as volume one, we have, Grizz and Inferno. They're the bad guys, part of the villain squad. And then you
And
have,
Grizz is kind of a cybernetic bear. That's
y-
yep.
yes, yes, half bear, half cyborg. And Inferno, he's a drummer, you know, and then you have characters like Ninjatsu. He's a turtle character. Then you have Esoteric. Esoteric to me he's got to be one of the most fascinating characters, and he's kind of like the wise elder leader of the group, and he was. I don't know how much of the story I should get into, but and
As
then you
much as
have
you want to, because
as
that's where
much as
we're
I
going
want to.
next.
All right, and then you have El Lotl. He's a good guy. You have Bellatrix. You have Toshiko. You have um, there's just so many.
Is it
And
Azalea?
what is it?
Is it Azalea, the butterfly?
Akitsu.
Akitsu. Okay, yeah.
Akitsu, the
I was way
dragonfly.
off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Dragonfly. Okay, yeah. I
yeah.
missed out on
Butterfly,
that one. I was
dragonfly. They all have
kicking
wings.
myself.
Right? That's okay. Um, but yeah, I love the way the story shaped up. And then of course you have Sledgehog.
Hmm.
That's a big fan favorite. Shout out to Chris Pemberton. Um, but yeah, so I'm really excited about the comic and the storyline, how everything fits together. And I was talking about Esoteric. Um, I don't know how much of the story I should get into because I'm just gonna like spoil stuff, and you want to keep some level of excitement in the
Of
comic.
course, of course.
But
So
go ahead.
esoteric. We'll say, as far as I've seen, he seems to be like the Master Splinter sort of character,
Yeah,
right? So with this, he kind of brings everybody together and gives them purpose, and sends them out on whatever missions that they need to stop the bad guys. I didn't know those two were the bad guys. Totally makes sense though. So that's really cool. Um,
yeah. I kind
yeah,
of look at Inferno and Grizz as like the Bebop and Rocksteady of
yeah.
Shadowline.
Which
Like
makes sense. Grizz
yeah.
totally looks like a frat boy dude, bro. Like with the hat and all that. So it's like I could absolutely see that. You know.
I always think of whenever I think of Inferno drumming and like his personality, I think of what was the movie whenever they were playing Phil Collins in the air tonight. Like Mike Tyson was like, "This is my favorite part," and he like did the drum roll.
Oh, geez,
Like
I think
what?
that was The Hangover.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like that. That's Inferno's personality to me. Like right there.
Does it? You think he'll speak with a lisp then?
Hey, I don't know. That's a good point. Maybe he should
Yeah,
because he's
yeah,
so
maybe.
tough. And
Well,
he's
it's weird. They've got like that
you
big jaw, so it's like I don't. Who knows? Who knows how they'll speak? But that's a fun part that you get to do with the concept. The neat thing for me is here I stand in West Chicago in the suburbs of Chicago, just 40 miles outside the city, and I am in Shadowland. This is
That's
the
right.
area, right, where all
Yeah.
of this is supposed to be happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of you know, I approached Shadowline with like because you can't blatantly put it right in the TMNT universe, right?
Yeah, of course.
Uh, Without the
Unless
proper
you want to get
licensing.
sued. Yeah.
Right, right. Like and without the proper licensing and everything. And so, but it was like directly inspired and created as a community thing from like these huge diehard TMNT fans, original TMNT artists, and so it's like, well, how do you kind of get around that, with doing everything morally correct and all, and so we look at it as sort of like a netherworld's multiverse story,
Hmm.
and then TMNT that went down in New York, so we asked the question, well, what was happening over in Chicago around that time, and so that's where Shadowline is set.
It reminds me a little bit of like the Palladium role playing game. like just kind of how you could pick your own characters and things like that, and kind of how it's set up. So I don't know how familiar you are with that. They have a Kickstarter that went on last year, but that was a big inspiration for a lot of the original fans. And the cool thing is you get to pick your own mutant and kind of set stuff up like that. So this is cool because like you had these contests for people to come up with their own thing, and they're making an action figure. I mean, that's talk about living the dream. And it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's and that's one of the best parts about it is, the engagement with the community. And when someone wins and it's their opportunity to come up with a character, and they're all excited about what they're going to choose and what it's going to be and what their powers are going to be and what their weapons are going to be, and they're all excited about the for when the figure is going to be made. And yeah, it is, man, just bringing that stuff to life, like with Sledgehog, Chris Pemberton.
Yeah.
he it's almost like he'd been waiting for this moment, since he was like a little kid, because like he finally won one of these things, and he had everything lined up perfectly. He had like all these images and everything, all the description all written out. It was like a novel. And uh and yeah, it came out great.
Well, speaking
One of
of
the
Chris, he did give me a quote. I had asked for a quote earlier, and he gave me this. So the Shadowline is uniquely special in the fact that it has been built by fans for the fans. To be able to create a character and a vehicle for that character and see it brought to life by Jonathan and your Mirage heroes was an incredible enough. But the fact that I was able to incorporate elements of my family and history into it to create someone special for my son, to tailor the backstory and bio specifically for that. Never once did Jonathan stamp out any idea. We collaborated together with Dan and Jim Lawson, making a few small changes where needed without ever sacrificing once my passion or theirs. To be able to see my son hold that finished figure is in his hands is a dream come true. That's
Yeah.
outstanding. So,
Well
and
said, Chris.
shout out to Chris for that. Thank you very much for that soundbite, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And yeah, just that right there, that excitement, just doing something positive in the community, something constructive, something creative. um yeah, I mean, it just doesn't really get much better than that. It's all about the journey, and making stuff is fun. And when you get to make stuff with your friends and the community, and like these old school, Mirage legends, and
Oh yeah.
I just can't really think of too much better. I mean, when you have like people like Jim Lawson and Dan Berger, you know, doing your first comic that you're releasing, with your franchise, that's, I don't know, man. It's like pinch me.
Yeah, I recently met Jim at Granite State. Really cool guy, just awesome. And Jim and Kathy, just awesome. I
Hmm.
haven't met Dan yet. How did you get hooked up with the Mirage guys? Because you mentioned that you had him do the banner, but how did that come about?
Well, I was looking for some turtles to buy on like eBay, and I was just looking for something unique and fun, and I saw a few. Um, oh, what were they? Oh, come on, like Super Turtles, and they had a COA with them, or certificate of authenticity, that it belonged to like the Mirage Studios,
No
like,
kidding.
or
Okay.
something like that, and had a little head sketch on it, and I was like, oh, that's cool, and so I bid on it. And then I got to wondering, like, what? I wonder how this guy got this, and I wonder if he can get any more of it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and then I was like, hey, where did you get this? And I just started talking with the guy, and I was like, oh, you're Dan Berger, like selling these on eBay. Wow, that's amazing. And so then, I kind of got into researching Dan a bit more, and saw that he's a creator of Murdude, and
Yep.
he was just a super nice guy, super down to earth. And I even, worked up the courage at one moment. I was like, hey man, could you draw me like a head sketch of Murdude? That would be super cool. And he did it. And I was gonna pay him for it, and he didn't charge me. He just kind of did it.
Wow.
Sent it along with the turtles. I still have it framed up there somewhere.
That's so cool. That's such a cool mini series too. Like the Murdude, it's Murdude, Michelangelo, Murdude, and Mondo Gecko, like the Archie comic. Very
Hmm.
unique. So hopefully we'll get to the point where we can cover that one point on the show. So yeah, Murdude is so cool. Like just such an interesting character. Actually, kind of reminiscent of another pink
Yeah,
sort of
that's
invertebrate.
right.
Well, he's not
That's
an
right.
invertebrate, but cold-blooded character. So
It's
let's
funny.
see.
Dan was always he's he shared his frustration with me a few times about how with the Playmates Murdude, his tail didn't have any type of articulation. It was
Yep.
just like it just stayed like that. He's like, man, I just wish it had articulation. We're gonna have to make him that figure one of these days.
Yeah,
A
that would
Murdude
be
with
a
an
cool one.
articulated tail.
Yeah, how would you do? How would you even go about? Well, actually, you probably know how to do that now. You just have to
Yeah.
3D scan and the sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be able to like mass produce those, but maybe
No,
just kind of a
no, yeah.
custom favor for Dan kind of thing, you know. But yeah, we figure it out.
It's
Well,
it's a fan created that is
that's
not
right.
for sale. So
Fan art. You're right. Gifted.
all about fair use on this show. So
Y- Yeah, that's right.
so you got a comic coming out with this with the characters. We got season 2 coming out. I already pre-ordered Camo because I'm excited about him. I know that there's going to be a whole new crop coming out. I'm excited for Paws, when he
Mhm.
comes out. So Camo is a chameleon. He's kind of like an army chameleon with like one human arm. It's pretty sick looking. I had
Yep.
to get that one, like jump on that. Um,
Yeah.
if
Camo
people
has a.
missed out, oh, sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
no, no, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask if people missed out on these pre-orders, is there going to be an opportunity for them to get them later on?
So here's the thing with that. So I've released like 9 figures so far. 2 of them were variants of Grizz and Inferno. Um, but all 12 of the figures in volume 1 are having the USA release. And so Camo is figure number 7, I believe. Um, so I'm definitely doing the other 3 or 4 in terms of a USA release. But it takes so much time whenever I'm doing it myself at home and
Mhm.
I'm like pressing all of the bubbles. It is like sealing them all by hand myself. The work is just so there's so much to it. It's so tedious, and I'm like a perfectionist, so I want everything to look perfect. And so now we're making this transition over to the injection molded overseas manufacturing. Ultimately, I want to release all of these figures with injection molded plastic. Now, as far as the MJF process, the USA figures, once I get through these next 3 figures, I'm not going to make any more of those. Now, I do have stock on hand. Like I have probably, uh, you know, 25 extra camo than what I actually sold. Like
Which
in
is
right
smart,
now
yeah.
in my possession, and that's the same for most of all of the other figures. Between maybe like 10 to 25 extra figures on hand. So some of them on the website, treasuremonstertoys.com, that are zeroed out, not available, sold out. That's more of like I've vaulted the figure because what was happening was I would get to like I was working on a kitsu, and then people would order several of the past figures, and whenever you're in the mix of working on one of the figures, it's tough enough, especially with the how rapidly I've been releasing them. But then like whenever you get that curveball of like all these other figures that ordered, and then you have to like put those mocks together. You have to find all of your card backs and all of your inner trays and the accessories, and it's kind of the going back and forth. It can get I don't know. It can turn your head into scrambled eggs if you're not
God, I
if
can
you're not
imagine.
careful.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there might be an opportunity uh, to order those at some point, but they're limited as far as the USA figures. I've
Mhm.
limited them to 200 in total. Um, so I don't know. I haven't really fully decided. I might kind of, release them for like special event things here and there. Um,
Granite
I don't
State.
know. Yeah, yeah. What do you think I should do, Justin?
Geez, I think that you're onto something there, and I think that creating that sort of scarcity for people who are really interested in it, or making it like special, doing something along the lines of, "Hey, we're doing a giveaway for because now we hit X amount of followers," or "We're going to do another, Kickstarter, and this is going to be, you get a chance to get the old figures you missed out on." I think
Yeah.
any of those things are great. Or
Yeah.
or you do something else like we were saying, downloadable content. Like I joke about downloadable, but it's like accessory packs and things like that. Like do that. Oh, we're gonna release a new, I don't know, accessory for El Lotl or something like that, and here's a chance that you can get him if you missed out, something like that. You know, any of
Yeah.
those.
I like the way you think, Jason. I like it.
Yeah,
It's
it's
good when other people can help you think on stuff like that, from time to time. You gotta
And
have
that's
that.
why it's been great getting to meet a lot of the guys in the support group that we have, kind of a small community to bounce stuff off each other. It's been great. I've actually made quite a few friends with these folks. So
Yeah. There's a
shout
lot of
out to
great.
all of you boys.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of great people in there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's been
Same
fun,
here.
getting to know them, and it's like I was saying before about like how you're the positive side of this. It's like I'm not running into those people in this group that are like, oh, I'm gonna step over my mother so I can get that spatula accessory that was limited that came with like, I don't know, Shogun Shote or something. And it's like because you meet those people,
Oh
but I'm
yeah.
like, wow, I haven't run across a single one. Everybody's awesome.
Yeah.
That's why it's been
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a great community of people, and everyone is welcome to join Treasure Monster Toys on Facebook. We have our business page that's just Treasure Monster Toys, but then we have our private collectors group that's Treasure Monster Toys TMNT. So all are welcome.
I meant to ask you about Army Ant. How many? Because you said these are limited to 200. What's your production run on Army Ant like?
Army Ant. Um, so I will be making at least 1,000 of those at
Makes sense.
minimum. So yeah, but
You don't
I
want to
have
have to go back,
yeah. Well, whenever once the molds are made and all the tooling is done, you can go back and order another 1,000, another 500 whenever you need.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So the molds they can make up to like 100,000 figures. The iron molds are good for like up to 100,000 figures.
Oh,
You look at it like a lot of these like old coin strikings from back in the day. It's like after so long the molds start to deteriorate and break down from all of the pressure and the heat. But yeah, we can make a lot of army ants with these molds, so we're in good shape.
yeah. In Chicago here at the zoo, the big thing that we have is the moldoramas, which are kind of plastic that is just like molten plastic that's put into these molds, and then it kind of just drips out afterwards, and it comes out, and you got to pick a nice giraffe that says Brookfield Zoo or something like that. So, and we're really known for it. It's a big Chicago thing. It's like an institution, and from what I understand, Jack White from the White Stripes was such a big fan of this. He has one in the shape of a guitar in his guitar shop in Nashville. So,
Oh,
but it's
that's
like
that's
this
really
big deal.
cool.
But yeah,
That's really
it's
cool.
they swap out those plates every couple months for maybe like the holiday season or like Halloween or anything, and and then they eventually retire them, and it's big collection stuff out here.
Hmm. I'm gonna have to check that out sometime. I
Oh,
went
yeah.
to Chicago. I went to Chicago one time. I've been to Chicago once, and it was a very interesting trip. I don't know. Man, we'll tell that story another time. But
Well, there's
but I
there's some
was
good cons here too, and I know you're not too far away, but like C2E2 is probably a really good one because that's more comics than like just regular like pop culture. But then there's also like Fan Expo and all that. Do you have any plans to hit the circuit this year for Treasure Monster?
I do. I really have to stay dedicated to making sure that I get all of these figures fulfilled, both with the USA figures and also with um, uh, Army Ant and the injection molded figures. But once I can get everything lined out and I know everything's on point and going through smoothly, I absolutely want to add some some cons to my regiment, and hopefully be able to do it each year. I'd like to have like a boots on the ground situation, a nice booth full on spread, and have some mutant multiverse products out there, some Shadowline figures, some Army Ant, and yeah, kind of connect with the fan base that way. There's only so much you can do virtually. It works and it's convenient, but being able to talk with someone in person is a totally different thing.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. I know that you had a chance to go to the Portsmouth Minicon. What was your experience like there?
it was amazing. It went by. It just went by in a blur. It was so fast, and but it was incredible. I got to meet Kevin Eastman for the first time. I got to meet Peter Laird for the first time,
Lucky devil.
and yeah, I absolutely was. I was actually the last person I think to get to meet him. It's like I barely got to meet Peter, like by the hair of my chinny chin chin. But yeah, and Jim Lawson. Uh, I was begging Jim to do the comic book at PMC 40. I was like, please, Jim, do the comic. And he was like, I don't know. Just because it's a lot of work, like Jim's
Jim,
getting
you could
to,
put as many motorcycles in it as you want.
yeah.
Sold.
I was like, Jim, I was like, if you don't do it, I'm going to have to go ask Kevin. And like, and he just
Oh
started
wow.
laughing.
Okay.
Yeah, like he was which was a joke, which he really appreciated that joke, and he
I
was like, "I'll
imagine.
chew it. Yeah, I'll chew it over." I was like, "I'm gonna have to go ask Kevin if you don't do it, Jim. Come on, man." Like, but he appreciated that joke, and he said, "I'll
You're like,
chew it
Jim, you
over."
don't have to detail every square inch. She's like, don't tell me how to do my job.
Right?
I've seen some of the pages you put up there. I'm like, oh my God, there's like zero negative space, man. Jim is a
And
monster.
he
He's a
is, and he's especially so. Like he is a production. He is like a machine. He is. He just churns the work out like you just like no other, man. It's amazing. He's a workhorse.
yeah, it's
It's like
impressive.
it is, especially it's unique because when it comes to creativity, usually like if like with art, music, things like that, it's like you got to wait for your muse. It's got to come to you. You got to be zen, and everything's got to be perfect. You got to be inspired or whatever, and it's just so usually like being like a workhorse that just churns stuff out doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with the creative side of it. But not with Jim. He gets her done, man.
Yeah, he's just channeling it. That's really interesting.
And I really love his style. He has like these interesting like cubism like undertones in his work. It's like, you ever notice that? It's like there's a
Oh,
little bit of
definitely. Yeah, yeah. A lot of
cubism.
angular lines instead of rounded corners. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely like I say this about like some of the Mirage artists, like Eric Talbot, for example. You could tell his artwork from space because it's
Yeah.
like it's that distinctive. Jim Lawson is along the same lines. It's like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, that's this. Then you get into like those blurred lines. It's like, oh, Kevin and Peter. It's like, all right, well, there's kind of a lot of crossover between the two of them, but like those two, like Jim and Eric, it's like, oh yeah, you can absolutely tell that's quite distinctively their style.
Yes. Yep. I love that about Jim's work.
And I know you've got a special page. It looked like to be done by Mike Dooney.
Yes. So Michael is doing a variant villains cover.
Oh,
And
cool.
so yeah, I'm excited
Is he
about that.
painting it?
Yeah, full color, the whole shebang, and that's actually it is a stretch goal on our Kickstarter. If we hit a certain amount of money, I don't know. I'll have to look at it. So I'm hoping it gets unlocked to where we can release it with this issue. But if not, he's doing the work regardless. I'm gonna have that cover regardless, so we could always
Nice.
use it for issue number 2.
Oh, that's fantastic. So it's still in. So it's in production, and we'll be able to see it soon.
Oh yeah, he's working on it now.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he's working
he
on it
he's
now.
actually my favorite. So my number one. So to me, that was like, wow, this is really exciting. So
He's amazing. I was trying to get AC Farley to do one, and But
I know he's
you
not
know,
doing much in terms of art these days. He was not feeling great.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you just gotta be careful to respect these guys, give them their space, and you ask them and kind of beg them a little bit sometimes, and like when I was talking to Jim, but yeah, but ultimately, these guys are legends. They've put in their 10,000 plus hours and beyond, and you know,
Oh
it's
yeah, they know the deep magic. They were there when it was written.
oh
So,
yeah.
so we didn't get a chance to talk much about you and your history with turtles and all that, and that's usually a big part of our show. So just
hmm
to dive in a little bit to what's Jonathan House all about? What's your origin story with turtles like? Where did you jump on?
Well, I mean, really, it's kind of like the same old story that we all have for the most part. Uh, Watched the cartoons growing up, thought it was amazing. You wanted to wanted to be a martial artist, and uh, you got
Been
the
through that.
toys. You got right. You got the toys that you could. TMNT, the first movie, the 1990 movie, blew my mind. I was like 5 years old. I guess it was probably a few years after that when I really got into it, but I've probably watched that movie a million times, and it's it's just that same story of just growing up with it being a huge part of your childhood, where that's what you're excited to come home and see after school and or during the summer at grandma's house. And yeah, I didn't. I had a few Ninja Turtle toys, but I didn't have a lot of Ninja Turtle toys. My cousin, he had all the turtle toys, so it was always really exciting to be able to get to go over to his house and play with all his toys.
You're like, hey, can we
Um,
break out the blimp when I come over? Yeah.
right, exactly. He had one of those old school. His name's Daniel. He had one of those old school football toy chests. The
Oh
round
yeah, I
plastic
know the one.
football toy, and you took the lid off, and it was just full of turtles. So, but yeah, and then I got into. It's probably about 6 years ago. Whenever I got serious about collecting, it was one of those things. I spent most of my 20s and teens, 20s, and 30s playing music, writing music. It was just one of those things where I'd always see them in passing. And at one point, I had this epiphany, like, oh, I have my own money. I could buy all the turtles that I never had when I was a kid now. And it was just like, it was always in the back of my head, like, uh, one day, one day, I'm going to do this. One day you will be mine. And so
You're
about
starting to
six,
sound like Benjamin Baldwin now. So
right. One day. But, and then, yeah, so it was just probably about 6 years ago when I really finally settled down and got serious about, collecting and just hoarding turtles and accessories. And yeah.
that's great. So, did you have any grails that you were going after? Anything that was? Because you did mention you had some of the superhero turtles that you went after with Dan, but
Mhm.
what were you looking for when you got back into collecting?
Well, whenever I got into collecting, you know, I don't, I just wanted to get all of the figures that I remembered from whenever I was a kid. And then, you get into to your white jersey, Slam Dunkin' Dons, and your
Oh
giant
yeah,
trolls. I'm a sucker for the trolls, so I love the giant
I just
trolls. And
don't get it. It's and everybody loves them and all that, and I'm like, I just don't get it.
I don't know.
It's just a preference thing for me. And I have no problem with trolls. Like I'm like, oh, I read Treasure Trolls growing up. I remember when it was a huge thing, but I don't know why they just never appealed to me.
It's okay. We'll win you over one of these days, Justin.
All right, so
I don't
here's
know.
the question: is there going
Go
to be a
ahead.
troll version of any of the Shadowline figures?
I'm gonna make one especially for you, Justin.
That's
I'm just
big
gonna send
old
you troll figures.
a big old troll, maybe of Inferno, with the fluffy hair, and who would be the best? I guess I don't know.
I don't know who would be the
Esoteric,
best.
but the beard is the troll. It goes down
Oh,
because it's
that's a
a
good
goat. Yeah.
idea. Yeah,
So,
that's a great idea.
oh man, I can't even imagine. Do you think that would be that much harder to produce? Like to put
I don't
something with like
know.
the fluffy hair, or they just glue the hair on? Yeah.
I don't. That is a good question. I haven't really looked at
I
how
didn't
they.
expect this conversation to go here, by the way.
Hey, man, you know. I don't know. I've never really looked into that aspect of. I have looked into how to do like a flocked action figure. It's like
Oh yeah, wow.
you can buy flocking and like the glue and stuff like that. What was I gonna do? I was gonna make a custom flocked TMNT figure. Now I can't remember which figure it was gonna be. Come on, John, think. Maybe. Oh, I was gonna make the. I think I was gonna do a Razor. Like how remember how they were gonna
Oh
come out with the
yeah.
flocked one. I was wanting to do that. But yeah.
You can't.
Anyhow.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with that. I mean, that would like pretty much anything would make that figure look awesome. Like in terms of like if he's like fluffy or repaints. I've seen a lot of repaints on it. Just you get rid of that green sort of color, and then it's like, yeah, this is awesome.
Well, they were gonna come out with a flocked one like back in the day. Playmates. They were gonna. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not, but and it's like one of those things that never got into production. He
Yeah,
looked a
yeah.
lot.
Recently, I saw a couple things. I know Chris Fawcett posted on a post about the April as a cat, but she was like the monster, like for the Universal Monsters ones. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. You
Hmm,
know, that would have been so neat. So, but of course, I do have his book too, so I go through the book and I could see all that in there anyway. So.
right.
But what's the dream project after you've made these? Like, do you foresee something along the lines of making a Shadowline cartoon down the road? Like,
Yeah, that's ultimately the dream. It's like I want there to be an animated series. I just I just want to sort of I don't know. It's a big dream, and you know, I say it so casually, like I just want to do this because we sort of like relive our childhoods with our
oh yeah,
collectibles and the
yeah,
nostalgia, and it's just like, okay, well, what's the next level? Let's just make a whole new franchise that reinvents that whole experience of the early '90s. You have your cartoon, you have your toys, you have your comics, and it's like, yeah, a bold venture to say the least, right?
hmm
But that would be the dream to have, and not just to have an animated series, but to have it to where it's reminiscent of the early '90s with where there's just not a bunch of noise on top, an unnecessary noise, uh, and just has those messages of family and unity and honor and just yeah, just that good old fashioned feeling.
yeah. I like that, and the whole idea of kind of what's missing from a lot of these folks that are in these fandoms that get so rabid about it and they get so upset. And it's like, hey, you do realize that like you're talking about like a character that has honor and is trying to save the world, but you're like
Yes.
doing an underhanded deed to try to get that character. Like,
Yes,
why would you steal a Superman figure? It's
dude,
like,
that's
things like that. Like, let's get back to that sort of thing. It's like the turtles
yes.
taught you honor, you know, live it.
Man, the collectors community, there are some divisive people in the community. Sorry, I got to move my foot here. Hang on. I'm like wedged in here. Okay. There's certainly, there are some divisive um, individuals and encounters, and yeah, man, people can be hardcore whenever they want to get certain things, or they want to put certain things down, or you know, there are a lot of snobs out there, or
Oh
uppities,
yeah.
or and
Oh yeah.
a lot of people who just want to get what they want to get with no care. And yeah, I agree. I was actually having that conversation with the TMNT collector the other day, Dave Fawcett. Dave Fawcett, yeah.
Yep.
And it's just people identify as these hardcore, deeply immersed TMNT fans, but I don't know. They seem to throw the principles that they live by out the window. You know.
That's what always blows my mind, because I'm a Leonardo guy, and I try to always lead by example. Live the code the best way that I can by honor and stuff, and that's a choice that I make. And I try to aspire to that because realistically, I'm probably more of a Michelangelo. What can I do? But I mean that's the whole thing. I try and like we always talk on this show, like Eric and I, we're a positive message. If we didn't like something, you probably never hear about it. maybe with the exception of the Bay movies. Then we do probably get a little negative on that one. But even there, it's like if you like it, cool. That's great.
Yeah.
You like it. It's all adding to the turtle zeitgeist. Enjoy. So different strokes
I,
for different folks.
yeah. And I think that's great, and I think that's just the reasonable way to carry yourself as a human being, And I don't
Yeah.
understand why. I don't know. Psychology is a whole different, very deep subject of how people act and think the way they do, and there's a lot of fascinating stuff to it. But I kind of lean into your spirit there with how you kind of carry yourself.
Hopefully, we'll be learning some of these lessons from esoteric soon. I before I forget, I did want to ask about one of the characters, which was Scott the Invisible Turtle. Can you tell us the story about Scott? Because I don't know if everybody knows this.
Yeah. So Scott the Invisible Turtle is a tribute figure to someone in the community that we lost. Um, it was about a year ago, or maybe a little over a year ago. And his name's Scott Holland. And Scott's favorite figure was Mike the Invisible Turtle Mikey.
Which I actually have right here. So yeah.
Yes, that was his favorite figure. And he was a big Chevy guy. And so, we just, after he had passed, um, we just kind of wanted to do something, uh, in honor and remembrance of him. And so there was someone else in the community whose name escapes me right now, and he made a figure that was like an Invisible Man Mikey, and he had a sculpt of Scott Holland's head put on it. They released a few of those, and then Joey Bushdiker, he won one of the character events, and whenever I asked him, all right, like what do you want your character to be? He said just do this for for Scott. Uh, so that's what we went with, and
That's
Joey
crazy.
wanted it to be like in memory of Scott Holland.
Wow, all the goodwill that went into just making that one character. That's
Mhm.
man, that's what this community is about. That's the positive message that you're looking for.
Yeah, and a Kitsu. There was a co-contributor for that one, Brad Wilson. He's in our chat, and Akitsu was, in memory and in honor of his mother, Tina Wilson, who passed away not long ago. We actually made some card backs with his mom's photo on the back and like the clip
Oh
and
wow.
collect in the clip and collect box instead of putting like the Akitsu, headshot next to the bio. I made some for his family with his mom, a picture of his mom in there, and that came out really nice. And they were all very grateful for that. And so yeah, little stuff like that. It's huge when you can do things to honor people who meant something to you, or like Scott. He's a great guy in the community. Everyone loved. He was always super fair, super positive with everyone. So we lost him too soon. He was one of the great ones.
No, I'm glad that we got a chance to talk about him because I didn't want to forget. But so now my obvious question is going to be about pizza because you have the ability to create accessories and all that. So you could imagine that you're going to create a toy pizza. What are you going to put on this particular pizza? And is that something that um, you could create as an accessory for one of your figures, like something like? And how would you go about it?
You're saying like a pizza accessory. What would I
Yeah,
put on
so
it,
it
and
could
how
be
would
a
I go about it?
sticker. It could be like 3D molded or anything else like that. So you're going to make a pizza and you're going to give it to your Shadowline action figures. What are they going to be eating on it? What are the
Oh,
toppings on this hypothetical pizza?
pepperoni and green peppers.
Okay,
That's my personal
that's a
go-to
go-to.
pizza.
Okay, all right.
I don't know. I would have to think of it in terms of you get well,
Flies, stink bugs.
yeah. That's right. You got to think of it as like, well, what would be the most visually appealing? You can't just it can't be bland. You got to have some funky, fun stuff on there.
Well,
I don't
Inferno's just
know.
gonna eat the whole pizza in one bite. You know.
Yeah, there's actually a scene in the comic where Bellatrix and Tashiko they come back to Esoteric's lair, and they come in all giddy, and they're like, "We brought pizza," and that's
Nice.
that's one of the things I need to add that on. You want to be careful with how many tropes that you you
Of
you know you,
course.
you
Yeah.
put in. It's like turtle
You're in
character,
Chicago. They're
pizza,
gonna be talking about pizza.
ninjas, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was actually going to put that in as a tier reward in the Kickstarter of like you get your name put on the pizza box in the
Oh,
comics.
hell yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
great.
I could still do that. I should add that in there, right?
Well, there you go.
And an ad page as well. Comics typically always have ad pages, and it's kind of hard to really sell ads. But I was thinking it'd be cool to do like a almost like spoof ads. Like you could put a picture of your kid in there or something or whatever. It's family friendly, kid friendly stuff. So
Like
um,
the old 3D glasses and stuff like that. And remember in the 80s or the early 90s, they had like where you could send away for all these like, oh, if you sell this, you can send your tickets away and get like a mountain bike or something. It would have like
yeah,
all the prizes. That'd be
yeah, yeah,
hilarious.
yeah, 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 stuff like that. That would be great. Or, we have a lot of people in the community that they sell toys full time. That's what they
Oh
do,
yeah, yep,
and
they
they could
do.
they could put an actual ad in there, like, East Coast Toys or, you know, uh, whoever it might be, or Epic Shells, watch our
Yeah.
podcast,
Hey,
right?
there you go. Throw the
Mhm.
QR code in there. See now you have created another income stream. That's why you're the businessman in here. So and Eric would ask you, pineapple or no pineapple on your pizza.
It just depends on what kind of mood I'm in. I'm okay. I'm not.
Okay,
I have nothing against pineapple. I've loved me some Hawaiian pizza in the past,
nice.
but pizza is a very sad situation for me in some sense, and I'll tell you why. I don't know what happened, but about like it seems like it almost correlates with COVID when when I really started noticing it. But I cannot eat onions or garlic anymore,
Oh wow.
and it makes me like so sleepy. Like there's a particular chemical that's found in onions and garlic, and for some reason it's like my body metabolizes it in such a way. It's not like it makes my stomach hurt type thing. Like it's just it makes me so tired. I'm talking like unbelievably tired. Like you can't like if your house was on fire, you'd struggle to get out of bed tired.
Oh wow. No
Like
kidding.
like you've been drugged. And so, even if you don't get garlic right on your pizza, it's like immersed in everything, like the crust and the different. So
Ah, that's possibly sulfur. Sorry, the Donatello in me was trying to answer that question. So
yes,
sulfur
it
is
is.
found in both naturally.
Yes,
So
but it's
yeah.
like, and I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like acillin, Acillin, or acillin, or something like that. I think that's the main compound of it. But it's just like I don't know, like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I just started noticing it. Like I would out of nowhere, I would be like um, in bed for like 3 days. And I'd
Oh
be like, "What
geez,
is?"
yeah.
I was getting terrified. Like I thought I had some like horrible like autoimmune thing. I was like, "What is going on?" And then I finally friggin' figured it out by deductive reasoning, keeping an eye on what I was eating. That onions and garlic. Who
Yeah,
knew?
so maybe you're part vampire. Who knows?
Maybe, maybe that could be the case. But I
But
still eat pizza.
chances are, folks listening to this will probably already be past time for your Kickstarter. Congratulations on you're already at 108. As the time of this recording, I think you've got 17 or 16 days left of it. I'm gonna try to get it out as soon as possible, just so folks can still go there. Why don't you tell folks where they can find you and where they can find Treasure Monster toys and Shadowline?
Absolutely. So on the Kickstarter, and even if this does come a little later, there is a late pledge option now.
Ooh, okay.
That's a new thing. There's a late pledge option, and so you can just go on to Kickstarter and search Army Ant, uh, or Mutant Multiverse. Army Ant's probably easier to search. Just go on Kickstarter, search Army Ant. It'll pull right up. You can find us on Facebook, Treasure Monster Toys TMNT. I'm on Instagram, Treasure Monster Toys. You can check out treasuremonstertoys.com for some of our USA figures, the MJF figures that I was talking about earlier, limited edition ones. And yeah, and if you're ever in New Albany, stop by my house, and we'll have some pizza. Right?
All right. Sounds great. All right, so what we'll do is I will now just take a break, and I will go to our pizza recipe that I will hopefully have without onions. I want to thank Jonathon House from Treasure Monster Toys and Shadowline for being my guest. Be sure to check out. We'll have the link in the episode for the Kickstarter and for Treasure Monster Toys. Thanks so much, Jonathan.
Thank you so much, Justin. I'm glad we got to do this. Hopefully, we can do it again soon.
Oh, you bet.
It's pizza time.
And now, in a segment that we call Pizza Time, where we discuss any Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle or pizza-related food, I give you Pizza Time. And now, your Pizza Time for today. Peach pizza with jalapeno, prosciutto, and cream fraiche. Ingredients: 1 ball Neapolitan pizza dough, all-purpose flour for dusting, semolina flour, rice flour, or all-purpose flour for the peel, 2 tablespoons cream fraiche at room temperature, 1/4 cup thinly sliced jalapenos, 1 cup thinly sliced peaches, about 3 ounces, 3 ounces low moisture whole milk mozzarella cheese pulled into 1/2 inch pieces, about 3/4 cups, 5 slices of prosciutto, then extra virgin olive oil. Prepare the dough. Transfer the dough from the storage container to a roomier, light flour-covered container. Then allow to prove at room temperature for 1.5 to 2 hours. Prepare the oven in the pizza peel. For about 1 hour before you want to bake the pizza, place the steel pizza peel on the top third of the oven and preheat to 550 convection roast, or as high as it will go. Dust the pizza peel lightly with semolina flour on top. Stretch the dough. Lightly dust a work surface with flour. Using lightly floured hands, pat the dough gently to flatten it. Stretch it to a 10 to 11 inch round by laying it on the back of your hands gently, rotating it, taking care not to depress the beautiful air pockets in the dough. If the dough begins resting, set it down on the work surface and rest for 5 to 10 minutes. Then continue stretching. Transfer the stretched dough onto the pizza peel and give it a shake to ensure it's not sticking. Top the pizza. Spread the cream fraiche over the dough, leaving a 1/2 inch border for the crust. Top the jalapeno and peach slices, spacing them evenly. Scatter the mozzarella evenly over the top. Lay the prosciutto slices over the top, spreading evenly. Drizzle lightly with olive oil. Stretch the dough one last time, pulling outward on the edges. Redistribute the toppings as needed, then give the peel one last shake to ensure. Shimmy the pizza, still on the parchment, onto the steel pizza peel, and bake until the cheese is melted and the edges are beginning to char, about 5 to 6 minutes. This may take up to 8 to 10 minutes depending on your oven. Use the tongs to transfer the pizza to a cutting board, and discard the parchment paper, cut, and serve. And that is your recipe for today. Peach pizza with jalapeno, prosciutto, and cream fraiche.
Cowabunga, dudes! Thank you for listening to the Epic Tales from the Sewers podcast. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. This podcast has no affiliation with Eastman, Laird, Mirage Studios, IDW Studios, Archie Comics, or Nickelodeon Studios. This podcast is a member of the Dorkening Podcast Network. Check out thedorkening.com for other podcasts. Epic Tales from the Sewers is recorded by Justin Cooper and Eric Will.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. We have very active lifestyles. It's not all wandering the countryside aimlessly or scaring passing motorists. And we all love a good cup of joe. And there's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. Bold, robust, delicious. It's coffee that can wake the dead. With over a dozen different roasts and flavors, Deadly Grounds can satisfy the most finicky of coffee addicts. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
Greetings and shabibans. We are the Retro Reductibus Cephala Podcast, a long-form bi-weekly show that celebrates all the things that made growing up awesome.
Well, that sounds good, but I don't know what all those words mean.
I think what Parasite Steve's trying to say is that on Retro Reductibus, we explore a range of retro goodness, from toys, video games, and movies, to cartoons, and even snacks and school lunches.
Oh.
And we do it all with a positive spin, a slew of killer guests, and some very adult language.
And you know what else is cool?
No.
This crazy show is part of the Dorking Podcast Network with new episodes every Tentacle Tuesday.
What's that?
And if waiting 2 weeks for a new episode gives you a sad, know that we drop bonus episodes all the time, like the off-format Crow's Nest and an interview series we call The Brig.
You can listen to Retro Reductibus on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any app that's cool enough to carry the only show that celebrates all the things that make growing up awesome.
It took me 10 years to make the perfect man cave.
And then we took it over. And we made it into the multiversal chamber.
Then I started my own podcast.
And we took that over too. And we're the co-hosts, the Multiverse Kids.
Yeah, and I'm the dad, the geeky dad. And every week, we what?
We review the movies, shows, and books, games, and toys.
Yeah, and sometimes we even have a special guest. So, join us every week on the Geeky Dad Podcast.
Hello, intrepid listeners. This is the Generation Playlist Podcast, a podcast about music where we are your guides through a particular group or artist.
We talk about the music, and then we make a customized playlist to share with you, our listeners. And you can check us out wherever you listen to podcasts and find our playlists on Spotify.